We are delighted to have companies such as Nyagah come on board. They've already served the sector. They've been helping some of our bigger cooperatives in the financial sector. And we've seen the positive results as we go into modern management of cooperatives, as the Saccos and cooperatives in general start becoming major competitors with the other sectors of private sector, be it multinationals, parastatals, or rich families. We need to have a better managed corporate movement. Companies such as Nyagah and others have played a very key role in sharpening the management tools of our Saccos. So we welcome them, and we will continue working with companies such as Nyagah and others for that reason. Let me also add something that you talked of 12 million members of the corporate movement. That is correct. But every member of corporate movement has dependents. So you're talking of 12 million members plus 2, 3, 4 dependents. So you're talking of close to 30 million people out of a population of 40 million Kenyans. So it's a major economic player, but very often misunderstood.
While we are still at it, how well structured are they? Are they in terms of organization?
We went through a period worldwide, not only in Kenya, where cooperatives collapsed in the 1990s, during the days of when the World Bank and IMF introduced programs that made it difficult for cooperatives to survive. When the emphasis was on pure private sector, and the emphasis worldwide ignored the fact that cooperatives are private institutions owned by private people. After the 1990s, Kenya, which is a major cooperative country in this part of the world, and we control 50% of the corporate movement in Africa, restructured itself. From 1997, laws were passed to re-strengthen the then collapsing corporate movement. You remember the days of KFA, you remember the days of KPCU, all those collapsed in the 1990s. So the first attempt was 1997. Then when the Nyagah government came into power in 2002, one of the first things they did was to pass a new law in 2004, a new cooperative act that restructured the cooperative sector, and the process of strengthening it again started. So I'm happy to say that we've made major improvements, but the perception is still negative in the eyes of many Kenyans, particularly the older Kenyans, because they remember the 1990s. And part of what we've been doing the last 4 years when I've been the minister is to attempt to change that perception. That has been the case. We've also, as a government, helped and worked closely with the corporate movement, particularly the Sacco movement, and passed the Sacco Societies Act. That is a specialized act that has nothing to do with coffee or tea or matatus, but specialized for the financial sector. And what did they do? It is simply said, this sector is too advanced. We control 30% of all national savings, and we operate in some cases like Juakali. We needed, therefore, to bring in professionalism into the sector. And that's why the law was passed. But the law was an outcome of discussions with the IMF, with the Treasury, with the Central Bank of Kenya, corporate movement, and the ministry. And I was able, finally, to get it through Parliament. And is now operational for the last 1.25 years.
Maybe just before we leave that point, when you talk about 30% of the national savings, could you just put it in terms of figures? That would be how much?
Approximately $250 billion shillings.
$250 billion shillings.
Are held by Saccos, and ultimately the commercial banks, but most of it sitting in Corporate Bank of Kenya. But 30% of all savings are held by the movement.
The reason why.
And you know, a country that does not save does not grow. The reason why China is growing and the Western countries are struggling is because China saves. The Asian countries save. And that's what the Western countries are borrowing. So part of my mandate as a minister and a ministry is to encourage Kenyans to save more and more and more. Now, that money that comes from the Sacco, you need to understand, where does it go to? That money, if you go to the rural areas, if you see a beautiful house in the rural areas, the chances are that it's built by cooperative Sacco money or chama. The chances that a car, a matatu, a pickup, a tractor, a building is constructed using Sacco money. That's how our estimates tell us slightly over 40% of Kenyan GDP, gross domestic product, is owned by the corporate movement. And all you need to do is to go downtown Nairobi and see the buildings that are owned by the corporate movement.